The third wide receiver that I'm going to profile leading up to the draft is Wake Forest A.T. Perry. Listed at 6'5". Some people say that he will only measure 6'3" at the combine. I guess we'll see here soon. Very intriguing prospect, if you ask me. I have a comparison. I don't generally like to do comparisons. I feel like it's a limiting factor when you do that. I think it's more difficult to watch the film and try to speak on your own observations, which is I'm willing to do, and I'm willing to be wrong in some cases. And in terms of A.T. Perry, I might be, because I think he's a higher level prospect than a lot of people are giving him credit for. He had an amazing statistical impact in the last 2 years, 21 and 22. He comes out as a redshirt junior, even though he had 2 seasons, 2019 and 2020, with limited impact at Wake Forest. He wins a lot of one-on-ones down the left-hand sideline, wins contested catches. He's a natural hands catcher, in my opinion. There is some talk and discussion if you read stuff about him being a guy who struggled with drops. I don't have access to that data, and I'm going to be honest with you, I prefer it that way. I want it to be based on just what I saw, and it's a limited sample size, being 6 games overall, which I think in his career he played 43, 27 in the last 2 seasons where he had his most impact. So I didn't see those drops. I didn't see him. I saw a guy who catches the ball with his hands. If you compare him to Quentin Johnston, I'm not talking about the talent level, because Quentin Johnston is going to be gone by pick 12. If nobody picks him before the Texans do at 12, I expect the Texans to take him at 12. But in any case, comparing the way they catch the football, it's night and day. A.T. Perry has shown better hands than Quentin Johnston. There is no way around that, because he catches the ball away from his body. He's able to utilize his huge catch radius, long arms. I don't know what his arms will measure at the combine, but I'm sure it's got to be something unbelievable. Whether he's 6'3" or 6'5", he's able to use those arms to catch the ball, use that arm length and soft hands to catch the ball. I haven't seen drops like other people have. I saw 2 balls in the 6 games that I watched that I could say, maybe he could have caught, but I thought in both situations they were balls that the quarterback kind of threw away from defenders to make it to where there was no chance the ball was intercepted, and the only guy who could catch it was A.T. Perry. The games that I studied here for this and that I used for some Twitter videos I did was Clemson and Florida State in 2021 because of the level of competition. Clemson, of course, had Andrew Booth, who's now in the NFL, and I thought A.T. Perry did exceptionally well against him. Drew 3 defensive pass interference calls in that game alone, and I thought there could have been one more. And then Army in 21 and 22, that's the 2 games I had access to. He makes catches at all 3 levels. Let's do it this way. There is talk about his route tree because Wake Forest has an unusual offense. If you haven't gone and watched it, don't. It's very unusual with the way they run their RPOs. The quarterback will kind of mesh with the running back for a very long time. I mean, an extended period of time. The running back is even taught to hesitate until the quarterback makes his decision. I understand that they're elongating the amount of time that the defense, the linebackers, second-level guys are put into conflict. A.T. Perry wasn't just a guy who ran slants on RPOs, but what I'm saying to you is it's a very unusual offense. There were times where the ball was given to the running back on what looked like RPOs to me, delayed RPO reads, and A.T. Perry's like running a post wide open in the middle of the field, or running a quick slant, or running some type of out-breaking route. I thought there was plenty of times where he could have been targeted and was not, but I read 2 draft reviews of him that said he was overused, over-targeted, and I just did not see that. Was not the case in what the games that I watched. Makes catches at all 3 levels, in my opinion. Short routes, intermediate, particularly intermediate in breaking routes, and then posts, outside release goes, back shoulder fades down the sideline, 12, 13 yards plus. Didn't see a lot of intermediate out-breaking routes. I'm not talking about, back shoulder fades. Intermediate out-breaking routes. I think he has better footwork than people are giving him credit for, and I think he's a much better route runner than advertised. His feet, in my opinion, do not look like a guy who's 6'5". So maybe he's not 6'5". And when I say his feet, I mean his footwork, his ability to pick him up and put him down, and then his ability to get like inside of the corner and then break in on that dig and run away from the corner, who kind of maybe knew he was running a dig anyway because of the release. I felt like, in terms of limited route tree, which was one of the things discussed about him, was if he went inside on a corner who was within 5 yards, you were generally going to get a dig, or a slant or something like that. And if he went outside, you were getting an outside release go or a back shoulder fade. So there was some limitations in some of the routes I saw. But again, it was a small sample size that I watched 6 games. He appears to make difficult catches despite contact often. I mentioned that game against Clemson in 2021. I don't recall his statistics. You can feel free to look them up, yourself from that game. But I have him drawing 3 DPIs in that game. And one more should have been called in the end zone, where basically Wake Forest realized they had a matchup advantage, started going to him over there against Andrew Booth and other guys as well. There was a comment made on Twitter. I'm not going to call the person out because I really like this person, but basically saying he looked like a little bit better route runner than Miles Boykin. If you're not a Ravens fan or a Steelers fan, then maybe you don't necessarily know who Miles Boykin is. I don't like to disrespect players, and I don't think that person was, but just a comparison point. Miles Boykin, I think, had 12 touchdowns in his career at Notre Dame. He had 8 in his final season there. A.T. Perry had 15 in 2021. He had 11 in 2022. 26 touchdowns in the last 2 years. There is no comparison between these two guys in terms of the ability to make themselves available with the route, whether it's man or zone, catch the ball smoothly and crisply, and then get yards after the catch. I just don't see the comparison, me personally, but I wanted to mention that some people did. I feel like statistically there's a huge gap between those two guys. If people like to make comparisons, no problem, go right ahead, but you show me how many guys are 6'5", or let's just even say he's only 6'3", and have scored 26 touchdowns over a 2-year period, and you really don't even know their name. I shouldn't say don't know their name. You don't hear as much about them as you do about other guys. I think it's possible that A.T. Perry gets drafted. His projection is late third, early fourth. I think it's possible someone takes him sooner than that. I think it all depends on the combine. If he goes with his catch radius and his size and the fact that he's a natural hands catcher, I think the combine is going to determine whether he gets taken early or not. He's going to go by the end of the 4th round, probably mid 4th round would be my guess. I'm new to doing this in terms of draft projections, but I'm willing to put myself out there a little bit with this one because I feel like the film shows a pretty damn good football player. Feel free to follow me on Twitter if you don't do so already, or subscribe to my Patreon, and you can get access to some of the game film that I'm talking about in the online database, or see some of the videos that I put on Patreon that I'm not able to put on YouTube. But in any case, last 2 seasons, 152 catches, 27 games, 28 touchdowns, 15.8 yards per carry, something like that. If he runs a sub 4.5 40, which I've seen 3 reports out there. I've seen one report that said he's going to run closer to a 4.6 than he's going to run closer to a 4.45. I don't see a guy who looks that slow. I saw one report that said he was going to run a 4.51, and then I read one report actually that said he has run a laser-timed 4.48. If he runs a 4.48 at the combine, and he looks good in drills and field drills, I think it's possible he gets drafted mid-3rd round. Who those teams are, see, I think people, and I think we all do this, myself included, but I think sometimes I try to take a step back and avoid just making a blanket statement about a player based on their talent, because I think it all depends on the team need. The team need, to me, almost overrides, where the players should be drafted. If you have, and I know people have their big board, like a team like the Ravens is one of the worst, if you ask me. They draft well, don't get me wrong, but it's one of the worst that, here's our board, here's our order of our prospects, and we're just going to go down the line. I think you got to look at positional need a little bit more so than the Ravens do at times. I think teams like the Texans, who have a shit ton of picks, the Chargers, Carolina, and the Ravens, obviously if it's a wide receiver, the Ravens are going to be in on that in terms of it could be someone who could help them. Now, the Ravens have Shemar Bridges, so they have a guy who's already a, quote, project and is tall. But I think that if you compare A.T. Perry to Shemar Bridges, there is no comparison in terms of the ability to run routes, catch the ball with people on his outside shoulder. I'm talking about in-breaking routes. Stutter go on people. I've seen A.T. Perry run that route quite well before. The back shoulder fades. He looks like a more refined receiver already. even though I understand some people would say, well, he plays in the ACC, doesn't play in the SEC, doesn't play in the Big Ten, or at least for Ohio State, the teams that are consistently putting out receivers. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a big fan of A.T. Perry. Do I think he's one of the top 10 receivers in this draft? No, but I'm not a person who does top 10 rankings anyway. But, I guess you have to do this at some point. I mean, me personally, I would see him as somewhere between 12 and 15 in this draft, but there's a lot of depth at receiver and corner, and that makes sense. The training methods for those positions have kind of shot up dramatically upwards in the last 10, 15, 18 years, just like they have for quarterback. Training methods for all positions have improved at various times, don't get me wrong, but receiver, corner, and quarterback, those are like a triangle. And to me, those things kind of match or keep up with each other in terms of training methods, how early you get quality instruction, and with the explosion of 7-on-7 in the spring for the the teams that are allowed to do it, which is most states now for high school level and even youth sports. Think about the three positions that are utilized in 7-on-7: the quarterback, receivers, and DBs. Yeah, there's linebackers there, there's tight ends and running backs, but 7-on-7 is generally an activity that's there to showcase quarterbacks, receivers, and DBs. It's no surprise that those are the positions where we're seeing a surplus of good players available. Some people think that there'll be 10 or 12 corners taken in the first 3 rounds in this year's draft. Look, I think A.T. Perry is one of those guys that, depending on the fit, depending on where he goes, he could have an impact from year one. He could also go somewhere and it could take him 2 years to get into the lineup. I think it depends on the team need. I think it depends on the scheme. He looks to me like a guy, if he was to go into like a Shanahan type system, 49ers or what the Texans are going to apparently be running, or even a team, and I don't think he'll get drafted by this team, even a team like the Lions, because they've got good receivers. Hell, they're getting rid of DJ Chark supposedly soon, and he's a guy who is in this same mold as A.T. Perry, 6'4", 210, 215 pounds, athletic catcher, can run the post and beat you on the post, back shoulder fade, and win contested catches down the outside between the bottom of the numbers and the sideline. I think A.T. Perry is being criminally underrated so far. The combine numbers may make that statement look asinine, but I'll stick to it because the gameplay that I've seen on film, especially against Clemson and Florida State in 2021 when he scored 15 touchdowns overall, and against Army in 2022 when he scored 11 touchdowns, I think warrants a guy who's picked within the first 3 rounds, maybe even midway through the 3rd round. As a Ravens fan, I would love for the Ravens to be able to get this guy at 86, but I understand there'll be a lot of calls by fans, rightfully so, to pick a receiver in the 1st round again. Me personally, I wonder if the Ravens aren't going to go corner first and then receiver in the 3rd round. A.T. Perry could definitely be there at 86, but I could see him being gone 10, 12 picks sooner. You guys, if you get a chance to follow me on Twitter, check out some of the videos I put on A.T. Perry. I think I put 3 up. Or if you join my Patreon, you have access to some stuff that I put out there where I actually break down the plays and show you some of the information and some of the patterns and skills that I think I see. Appreciate you guys checking the video out. If you enjoy these draft profiles, even though there's an absence of video film being shown clearly, please let me know in the comments section. I'd like to get as many of these out as possible before the draft in late April. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other people would enjoy this video, please consider sharing a link on social media to help the video get more reach.